Pharasma, the Lady of Graves, goddess of birth, death, fate, and prophecy. Her alignment is neutral, and domains include death, healing, knowledge, repose, and water. Her favored weapon is the dagger. Centers of worship include Brevoy, Nex, Osirian, the Shackles, Thuvia, Ustalov, and Borussia. Her nationality is considered Garundi. Pharasma is the stern observer of life and death, scrutinizing the tangled webs of fate and prophecy, mercilessly cold in the administration of her duties. Having seen infants die, the righteous fall too soon, and tyrants live to advanced age, she makes no judgment about the justness of a particular death, and welcomes each birth with equal severity. At the moment of a mortal's birth, she knows the many possible paths each soul could follow, but reserves her official verdict until the last possible moment. Legends claim that Pharasma saw Aurodin's death approaching, and even judged him as she does for all who are born mortals, but did nothing to warn even her own followers, many of whom were driven mad by the event. Though prophecy is no longer reliable, prophets continue to be born, and most of them are rendered insane by their confusing and contradictory visions. In art, Pharasma is depicted as a midwife, a mad prophet, or a reaper of the dead, depending upon her role. Her visage usually has gray skin, white eyes, and white hair. As the midwife, she is efficient and severe, hair pulled back and arms bare from hands to elbows. Pregnant women often carry tokens of this image on long necklaces to protect their unborn children and grant them good lives. As the prophet, Pharasma is wide-eyed and tangle-haired, and her words echo like thunder. As the reaper, she is tall and gaunt, with a hooded black gown and an hourglass with a fast-flowing red sand, and is often shown seated on her throne and passing judgment on mortals. Situated atop an impossibly tall spire, Pharasma's realm in the afterworld, the Boneyard, looms over the perfectly ordered city plain of Axis. When mortals die, their souls join the vast river of souls that flows through the astral plane, and eventually deposits them in Pharasma's Boneyard, at the top of her spire. Once there, they stand in a great line filtered through several courts according to their alignment and supposed planar destination. Those who die before experiencing their full fate might be lucky enough to return in this life or the next, either spontaneously or by getting called home by resurrection magic. But more often, those who feel that they've met an untimely end discover that their destiny was in fact always leading them to their particular moment of death, however unjust or ignoble. Though she allows resurrection, the Lady of Graves opposes undeath as a desecration of the memory of the flesh and a corruption of a soul's path on its journey to her judgment. She encourages her followers to hunt undead, as the souls of the destroyed undead will then reach her for judgment. At the heart of the Boneyard is Pharasma's palace, a Gothic structure built over the exact center of the spire. Psychopomps walk its pathways and quietly fly above its walls, performing their administration of souls, and Pharasma's faithful are housed within. Despite its light color and mood, the palace is obviously a creation of the goddess. It's unknown whether she made the spire herself. Pharasma manifests her favor through the appearance of scarab beetles and whippoorwills, both of which function as psychopomps, both in the figurative sense as guides for the dead souls, as well as the literal sense as manifestations of the outsiders called psychopomps. Black roses are thought to invite her favor and good luck, especially if stems sport no thorns. Her displeasure is often signified by cold chills down the spine, bleeding from the nose or under the fingernails, an unexplained taste of rich soil, the discovery of a dead whippoorwill, or the feeling that something important has been forgotten. Pharasma also sometimes allows the spirits of those who have died under mysterious circumstances and conditions to transmit short messages to their living kin to comfort them, expose a murder, or haunt an enemy. Pharasma's holy symbol is a spiral of light representing a soul, its journey from birth to death to the afterlife, and the confusing path of deciphering prophecy. Pharasma's church is a somber and structured organization and staunchly neutral in matters unrelated to its tripartite roles. As stewards of life and death, most priests see nationalism and other petty concerns as beneath them. Traditions passed down by the goddess and her prophets are followed stringently, though the variations of branches of the church differ with respect to which rituals and practices they assign the most weight. These differences are never severe enough to force different factions to open conflict, but may make it easy for worshippers to distinguish between members of their sect and other adherents. Most members of Pharasma's priesthood are clerics, though a sufficient number are diviners, oracles, and adepts. Roughly 2/3 of her clergy are women, though their gender mix varies regionally, and worldly details like gender and species matter little to most Pharasmans. Pharasma's followers are expectant mothers, midwives, morticians, and so-called white necromancers who study other applications of the magic than undead creation. Howlers, palmists, or necromancers, cloud readers, and others who use non-magical forms of divination also call upon her, although their allegiance has dropped off dramatically since Auradin's death and the end of reliable prophecy. In smaller communities, a Pharasman priest may assume several of these roles, or a team of spouses might split the duties between them. Prophets often go mad in this age of conflicting omens, and the Church has taken it upon itself to care for these poor souls, devoting portions of major temples to be sanitariums, which are operated by the goddess's clerics. Of course, as the goddess of birth and death, Pharasma has many lay followers as well, and even in lands where her faith is not large and organized, commoners pray to her for guidance or protection, much as farmers everywhere pray to Erastil for good crops. Pharasma encourages her followers to procreate, whether they're married or in less formalized partnerships. She also supports childless couples adopting and orphanages, taking care of those who have no living parents. Church weddings may be simple or ornate, depending on the social status and wealth of the participants. Though she is the goddess of birth, she does not oppose contraception. Her temples are known to provide assistance to women dealing with pregnancies that would inevitably end in the death of both mother and child, or to end the torment of a mother whose child is already dead in the womb. But on the whole, she believes killing the unborn is an abomination, for it sends the infant soul to the afterlife before it has a chance to fulfill its destiny. The goddess's midwives take all the precautions they can to reduce the risk of pregnancy and childbirth. Some church midwives, called Karsametsk, are so skilled in the combination of medicine, magic, and surgery that in dire circumstances they can cut a living child from its mother's womb and save both. On the 3rd day after the child's birth, families devoted to Pharasma call a gathering to welcome its soul into the world. The child must be given a name before this gathering, else superstition holds that it would be unlucky. Visitors bring small cakes, seeds, salted peas, and watered beer to share with the family and other guests. A priest or family elder lists the names of a girl's maternal ancestors or a boy's paternal forefathers, calling for the child to be named publicly and grow up with good health, and for the parents to live to see grandchildren born. Worshippers of Pharasma, as well as commoners in many regions, trace the goddess's spiral symbol on their chests typically as a form of prayer when hearing ill news or witnessing blasphemy, and before or during dangerous events or events with uncertain outcomes. Different lands perform this gesture differently. In Ustalag, it is done with a closed fist, while in Osirian it is with the first two fingers extended. Especially devout folk repeat this gesture in everyday activities, such as stirring soup or scrubbing a floor. Prayer services to Pharasma are a mixture of somber chants, stirring ritualized sermons, and joyous song, often based upon regional music, and usually end in an uplifting note. For while death comes to all, new generations stride forth in its wake. During celebrations, the goddess's followers often eat kolash, bread braided into a tight spiral and topped or filled with a diced fruit or sweet cheese. During the winter feast, the center portion of the spiral is left open, and a wax candle is placed within. The candle is lit at the start of the meal and is extinguished when the bread is to be eaten. Each temple keeps a record of births and deaths of its members, and on the anniversaries of death dates, priests speak the names of the departed, while those close to the deceased honor them by lighting votive candles that burn for an entire day and night. Many tombstones have niches to protect soul candles from the wind. When a member of the faith dies, the body is cleansed, immersed in water, and dressed in a special multi-part shroud consisting of 5 pieces for a male or 9 for female. A prayer written on parchment, bark, cloth, or stone is tucked into the shroud, and the corpse is sealed in a casket if local custom calls for one. A guardian sits with the body the night before the burial, to honor the deceased, to guard against body thieves, and to watch that the body does not rise as an undead. Mourners, typically the intimate family, traditionally mark their eyelids with black ash or an herbal paste for 5 days after the burial. Curiously, the Church does not frown upon suicide, though individual priests may debate whether taking one's own life is the natural fate of some souls, or a means to return to the goddess for a chance at a different life. Those who can afford it usually pay to have their remains interred on holy ground by priests. Wealthy merchants and nobles are laid to rest in room-sized private tombs, while those with fewer resources rest in shared burial cells in catacombs or ossuaries. The Church allows the dead to be cremated, though burial in earth is preferred. Disposing of a corpse at sea, sky burial, and funerary cannibalism are generally considered disrespectful. Exhuming a buried corpse is considered a violation of the dead, and the Church normally refuses to do this, even when the city government seeks to break ground for a sewer, aqueduct, or other vital construction. However, if a priest discovers a worshipper's corpse that has been buried improperly or accidentally exposed, he or she usually arranges for a proper burial in accordance with the Church's teachings. The Church does not mourn apostates, and while priests do not withhold services from those of other faiths, they flatly refuse to give rites to former Pharasmins who turn their back on the Church. In heavily populated areas, Pharasma's temples tend to be grand Gothic cathedrals adjacent to graveyards, though in smaller towns they may be humble structures with artistic flourishes meant to echo the great cathedrals, and even a single bleak stone in an empty field or graveyard can serve as a shrine. Large temples usually have catacombs underneath, filled with corpses of the wealthy and of former members of the priesthood, as burial under the goddess's temple is believed to soften her judgment of the deceased. Even a remote Pharasmin monastery has ample cemetery space, and might be the final resting place of generations of wealthy, influential folk, as well as an uncountable accumulation of tomb treasures. Many local temples have only one ranking priest, but the largest temples have a high priest or priestess for each aspect of the faith: birth, death, and fate. In theory, these high priests are all equal, though the high priest of prophecy has assumed a lesser role in recent decades, and the person holding that position is often strange or unstable.
Temples that include crypts also have a crypt master in charge of that facility. Rank within the temple is based on seniority as well as on knowledge of the faith, magical power, and personal achievements, such as the destruction of powerful undead. Hierarchy between churches depends on the size of the populations they serve. A large city's temple has greater influence than a small town's temple. Priests of Pharasma take responsibility for all three of her concerns in the mortal world. Priests of any gender, who are skilled in midwifery, assist in births, and the presence of a Pharasmin priest during childbirth almost always ensures that both mother and child will live. Priests focused on prophecy bear its questionable gift, or record and interpret the ravings of those who do, and all priests of Pharasma are stewards of the dead, familiar with both local funerary customs and those of neighboring lands. They protect graveyards from robbers and necromancers, and the memory of the deceased from the ravages of time, memorizing or recording what they have known about anyone who dies in their presence. Pharasman inquisitors hunt down the undead and those who seek to create such monstrosities, but all priests have a solemn duty to oppose such abominations when they find them. Creating undead is forbidden, and controlling existing undead is frowned upon even by evil members of the faith. Most priests are highly skilled in healing, but are often skilled at diplomacy and have knowledge about religion as well. A typical priest earns her living tending to women in labor, acting as a mortician, digging graves, selling spellcasting services, or building and blessing tombs for wealthy patrons. An adventuring priest will not violate the sanctity of a tomb simply for the purpose of looting it, and if she enters a burial place to fight abominations, she still opposes desecrating the non-undead corpses encountered during the hunt. Followers of Pharasma tend to be brusque. Some people attribute this to their haughtiness, but more often it is simply due to the fact that most of Pharasman's interactions are with the dead or dying, mad prophets, or women in labor, groups who rarely care about social niceties. When their services are needed, Pharasmans give orders and expect them to be obeyed. As a mortal soul, either recently departed or about to arrive, is usually at stake. All priests carry a skein, a double-edged ceremonial dagger with a dull gray blade, often with stylized depiction of the goddess's face and hair on the pommel. They use these daggers to hold open prayer scrolls, to touch parts of a corpse while performing death rites, to cut shrouds for the dead, and to sever the umbilical cords of newborns. It is not forbidden for a priest to use a skein to draw blood or to take life, but some refuse to do so and carry a different item to use in combat. A Carcimex carries a special cane bearing Pharasma's likeness on one side of the pommel and a crying child on the other, and uses this to perform her surgeries. Though Pharasman priests worship the death goddess, they have no taboo against preventing death through healing, either mundane or magical. Pharasman priests who sign on with adventuring parties usually act as healers, if not particularly gentle or sympathetic ones, and most temples raise money by selling healing and other spellcasting services. Even spells like raise dead, reincarnate, and resurrection are not forbidden, though churches usually charge a great deal for these. Many adventurers follow Pharasma because they believe in fate and in the inescapable path of destiny. Everyone worships the goddess to some extent, for not even the most hubristic of mortals or gods can deny that hers is the hand that shepherds the souls into the afterlife, sending those bound to the other gods to their rightful destinations. It is said that even gods are judged after their death by the Lady of Graves. For those who worship Pharasma above all others, the most important things in life are birth, death, and prophecy. When they adventure in her name, it is often to destroy undead or to seek out and attempt to understand strange prophecies. They might seek to protect the dead from disgrace and be exceedingly uncomfortable with the standard adventurer's practice of tomb robbing, though they have no problem rooting out whatever abominations may have taken up residence in such places, provided the innocent dead are treated with respect. In Ustalov, a popular sect called the Pharasmin Penance teaches that when Pharasma judges a soul, she counterbalances the pains and trials of life with rewards in the afterlife. Most who share this belief take on ascetic restrictions in their diet and allow themselves only meager pleasures in life. But some sacrifice more by wearing hair shirts or even by blinding, deafening, or flagating themselves, hoping to guarantee greater rewards in the afterlife. In some countries, extremists view enduring pain as a condemnation of pleasure and change, and hunt those who alter the world to satisfy mere mortal whims, by which they mean users of arcane magic. Pharasmin clothing takes two different routes. For many traditionalist or more ascetic priests, the only acceptable color for formal garments is black, sometimes accented with silver, such as the spiral brooches or amulet, and tiny vials of holy water. In recent generations, however, there has been a movement in many temples away from such dour fashions. Pointing out that the solemnity of death is only part of their concern, such iconoclasts celebrate the birth of new life by wearing more colorful and fanciful designed raiment. Instead of traditional black robes, they gravitate towards silver, gray, purple, and iridescent blue of the goddess's spiral. In addition to color, these iconoclast priests often add highly artistic elements to their clothing, designing their own unique outfits as a reflection of their unique threads in the Pharasmin's great tapestry. While outright conflict is rare, the two camps of Pharasmins have strong opinions regarding each other's clothing choices. Pharasma's holy book, The Bones Land in the Spiral, mostly consists of the words of an ancient prophet. The faithful debate which events its predictions foretell, and whether the prophesied days have already passed. Later sections dispense advice on facilitating safe childbirth, properly disposing of the dead to prevent undeath, and other relevant topics. In older temples, the holy book consists of a collection of scrolls, illuminated with rare inks and bound in metal filigree, each held in a gray silk mantle to protect it from wear and mishaps. Some of these collections are historical artifacts worth thousands of gold pieces, and priests bring only the scrolls they need to temple services, leaving the remainder in a safe place. Church doctrine mandates that worn-out protective mantles can't simply be discarded, so used mantles are either walled up in tiny compartments within the temple, or sewn into burial shroud for a priest or other notable member of the faith. Corpses fortunate enough to bear a Pharasmin mantle as part of their shrouds are said to be especially resistant to the power of undeath, including being animated or turned into spawn. The first month of spring, Pharast, is named for the Lady of Graves, a month of new life and renewal for the world. The church has two common holidays shared by all temples. Day of Bones. On the 5th day of Pharast, priests carry the enshrouded corpses of the recently dead through the streets of the city as an honored procession. These corpses are interred at no cost in a church graveyard, tomb, or sepulchre, which is considered a great honor to the departed. Procession of Unforgotten Souls. In lands where the Lady of Graves is a prominent deity, this ceremony is held nightly in the weeks leading up to the harvest feast, during which the faithful ask the goddess to delay when she takes them to their afterlife. Priests wear thin black robes over their festival clothes and carry lit candles in a procession into a large fountain, pool, lake, or quiet river. As they enter the deeper water, the candles go out. but as the priests reach the other side, the candles relight, and the water makes the black robes transparent, revealing the festival colors beneath. Along with its abundance of rituals, ritual objects, and ritual clothing, the Church has developed many habitual phrases. In most cases, a member of the faith makes the sign of the spiral over her heart when speaking one of these locutions. 3 of the most common are as follows: "Not this year, not yet." This is a brief prayer spoken in response to hearing a tragedy or bad rumor, for they have much to do before that time. The devout speak it at each morning's prayers and when they pray before bed. "All who live must face her judgment." Typically an enemy, but possibly just a flippant or disrespectful person, will suffer whatever fate is in store for them, even if it takes longer than the speaker would like. "The lady shall keep it." This is an oath to bear a secret to the grave, swearing that only Pharasma shall hear it in person, and only once the oath maker has died, or that she will claim the oath maker early if he breaks his promise of sincerity. All deities deal peaceably with Pharasma, for their agents must have access to her realm to escort souls under their protection to their respective homes. While she approves of some actions and disapproves of others, she remains aloof and distant, with no true friends or enemies. She detests entities like Urgathoa and Orcus, who actively disrupt the cycle of souls by creating undead, as well as daemons who prey on the river of souls. Yet she leaves direct conflict to her minions, and does not demean the honor of her role as judge by withholding souls rightfully bound for such patrons. Most of the other gods understand and appreciate her impartiality, though Iomedae views her with some resentment for keeping Auridin's approaching death a secret. Floats above the spire is a mystery. Like their goddess, the followers of Pharasma detest Urgathoa, Orcus, and all those who exalt an undeath, for they represent both a corruption of natural existence and a vile bending of the will of Pharasma. Pharasmans oppose these foes whenever they encounter them, and vehemently counter their attempts at evangelism. If they learn that such cults are planning to raise undead, Pharasmans recruit allies and spend resources without hesitation to stop the abomination. Otherwise, Pharasmans are free, but not compelled, to make allegiances and enmities with anyone they choose, on an individual level or as a temple, just as the Lady of Graves works with all gods to guide mortal souls to their realms. Pharasman priests are renowned for their impartial natures, and regularly minister to both sides in a given conflict, caring foremost for the proper treatment of the dead and newborns. Followers of Pharasmin Penance might clash with the faithful of deities who focus on alleviating or preventing suffering, but are more likely to simply view them with a cold distrust. A few fanatics take it upon themselves to pursue wizards, sorcerers, and other magic users who attempt to improve the world through magical means. The fanatics see these attempts as defying the will of Pharasma. Pharasma's realm is enormous and layered like an onion. The whole of the spire is hers, with no other god disputing her claim to the thin mesa that rises far above the city of Axis and supports her boneyard. At the same time, however, the boneyard is split into several different regions, the most notable being the various courts where souls with obvious destinations are divided up and sent on to their just rewards, such as those who sell their souls and then genuinely repent and work toward redemption, end up judged by Pharasma herself within her palace, with representatives from the planes involved in arguing the matter. Pharasma's palace is also the eventual home of those who worship the goddess directly. A soaring Gothic edifice, the palace stands in contrast to Pharasma's often somber and dour nature. Constructed of white marble glowing with an inner light, and with floors paved in onyx, it represents the goddess's dualistic power of birth and death. Pharasma's divine servants are usually psychopomps. Those spirits whose destinies are especially bright or unusually dark may visit the mortal world to carry a message on her behalf, even if they went to another deity or realm as part of their final judgment. The appearance of such a spirit usually relates to its activities in life or the god it served. For example, to warn her followers of a bloody battle, Pharasma may call forth the spirit of a mighty warrior of Gorum. In addition to her psychopomps, some of Pharasma's servitors include the following, which answer to Planar ally and similar calling spells from the faithful. Birth in Sorrow, a unique linworm. Resembling a gaunt, gray, wyvern-sized linworm, this creature can channel positive energy like a cleric and can animate objects, forcing them to serve her. She loathes undead, and often blasts and grapples packs of them, reducing them to dust and vapor. She prefers offerings of magic items useful for destroying undead or healing the living. Echo of Lost Divinity, a unique ghost. The spectral Aslanti soldier wears fine clothes in green and gold. When his face is visible, he resembles depictions of Arodin as a god. As he has only appeared in Pharasma's service since the death of the last Aslanti, some believe he is a remnant of that god. Echo of Lost Divinity denies this, however. He prefers to heal and support those who call him rather than attacking their foes directly. Steward of the Scheme. This skull-adorned, armor-clad, winged woman is Pharasma's herald. The steward is a loner, and has little interest in the desires of mortals. She is personable with other planar servitors of her creator, but her unique role places her above them in the religious hierarchy, and she does not like fraternizing too much with her underlings lest she distract them from what Pharasma has planned for them. Conversely, she is extremely interested when one of the goddess's other servants is due to give birth or die. Though the steward has no interest in procreating on her own, she arrives at the moment of celestial or half-celestial births to witness them with great interest, perhaps as a proxy for Pharasma herself, whose presence would certainly overwhelm the newborn and confuse its role in the tapestry of fate. Likewise, the steward has an almost morbid curiosity about one of her fellow servitors dying, and has an almost precognitive sense for such things, making her sudden appearance next to other servants of Pharasma in the material plane slightly worrisome.
Hello everyone. I trust that this much-anticipated video on Pharasma did not disappoint. As many of you know, up next is Asmodeus. Like Pharasma, he's one of the more referenced deities in the Pathfinder universe. Stay tuned for him, and as always, have a great day, God bless, and enjoy.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.